Have I talked about Grey Knights yet?
I don't think so. I think you've done most other Imperial factions, but not the Grey Knights.
Huh. Guess I'm doing the Grey Knights Index. I don't know when their codex is coming out. I know this year we've got the Imperial Guard, Eldar, and 2 Knights, which might be one codex. There's also all the Chaos factions, which I should probably do the Chaos Boys. But I really don't know enough about Chaos Space Marines, and I missed my time to do the Chaos Space Marines General faction, because the codex is now in a lot of people's hands. Not mine. I don't have it. Of course, now all factions have 2 indexes because of the Christmas shenanigans, and that means any without their codices, I'll have to figure out, which the Grey Knights, Death Guard, World Eaters are all a part of. I actually found out today that the Christmas indexes allow you to access them even if you don't have the codex that is out. So hey, that means those without codexes I'll have to figure out, which the Grey Knights, Death Guard, and World Eaters are all a part of. I should probably sort through my videos and figure out which ones I still need to talk about.
Oh yeah, probably. Why do you look like hell in a handbasket?
I don't know, I haven't been sleeping well lately. Since I broke my arm, my shoulder has been hurting, and sleep sometimes doesn't happen for me. I'll be fine, don't worry about it.
Padding out the runtime again?
Honestly, yes, but not to pad the time. I just don't know Grey Knights that well. I've played against them twice, maybe 3 times. I know they're jank with the index, so might as well jump into it. Grey Knights, they're Daemon Hunters of the Imperium, and got one of their units put into the Imperial Agents, and it's the only Terminator unit in the IAs, and they're the only unit that can't embark on any transport, so a bit questionable usefulness. But this ain't about those guys specifically. So this army's, army rule is based around that thing that Chaos Daemons do, teleport around. Teleport Assault is the name of it. Teleport Assault lets you choose so many units per points category at the end of your opponent's turn. 1 for combat patrols, 2 for 1k, 3 for 2k, 4 for 3k points. You'll be able to pick them up off the table and put them back on the field in the reinforcement step of your next movement phase, following the 9 inches away rule of Deep Strike. Now, be careful with this, because if you pick up units at the end of the 5th round, those units count as dead, so your opponent could get extra points. This only applies though if you're the first turn. Another reason to prefer the second turn. This really gives some great options, as moving characters around the battlefield is very good. Get an easy line of sight, get easy defensive locations and such. Now, keep in mind that when you deep strike and strategic reserves a unit in, you can't move them afterwards. So be careful. I'm not good with deep strike myself, so I'm not one to give advice on it. The actual index detachment is Teleport Strike Force. That's what we'll be talking about. Warpbane Task Force is the Christmas detachment. We'll see if I actually talk about those ones in the future. But this index is obvious in its thematics. It looks at the army rule and decides to double, triple, and quadruple down on it. So be prepared for uppy downy shenanigans. The detachment rule is Teleport Shunt. This is really simple rule. Every time you want to advance roll for a unit with Deep Strike, you don't need to roll. You add 6 inches to their movement, and the unit gains the fly keyword until the end of the movement phase. Fly in 10th edition is kind of questionable, really. It used to just let you ignore terrain, but now it essentially makes your movement worse. You have to measure an angle over terrain, which arguably could take more movement than just climbing up it normally. Without an insane amount of movement, it's just not worth it. But an extra 6 inches of movement is always nice. A little bit can go a long way. Keep in mind it is still an advanced movement, so without assault or special rules you can't shoot or charge. But given nearly the entire army has deep strike except for the vehicles and that aren't the Dread Knights, this can be kind of broken. I don't know how many assault or special rules there are for these guys, but I imagine a few of them given it's the whole theme of the army. Enhancements now. Inescapable Wrath is 15 points. It's pretty simple. Gives the bearer's unit a +1 on charge rolls. Simple but very good really. A 1 can make or break a lot of situations. Arguably, you could then make a 13-inch charge, but I don't think you're allowed to charge anything further than a foot away. Up next is... shit, we're going back to the unpronounceable names. Domina Liber Demonica? For 20 points, the bearer gets a +1 to wound rolls, but if the target has the daemon keyword, you can add 1 to the damage characteristic too. This is really jank against some Nurgle armies, given how they often use daemons, and how often the army is trying to reduce your damage output. Next up, at 30 points, wow, the 10-point jump there, is Sigil of Exigence? The hell is that word? Whatever, just keep on. This essentially lets you uppy downy a unit if they're targeted in the shooting phase once per battle, and lets you deep strike in the same phase, with the 9 inches rule, clearing the target of that first shooter if they're outside of shooting eligibility. Not bad, repositioning is always nice. First to the fray is 35 points. It forces the unit to start in reserves, but they don't count towards the maximum reserves, and they're allowed to deep strike in on any round, no matter the mission rules. Honestly, pretty good. Stratagems, 2 points, Radiant Strike. Give the melee weapon of a Psyker unit Psychic and Devastating Wounds. This can be a bit of a negative. Dev wounds are great. Psychic only applies a few selected things. Most of them are anti-psychic stuff, like Sisters of Silence or Calexis Assassins. This is a stratagem you have to weigh and ask your opponent if they have any psychic jank going on. For 1 point, Prognosticated Arrival, god that's a mouthful, can only be used on a Psyker unit, and it lets you deep strike 6 inches away instead of 9 inches, but you can't charge if you use this. Close enough to give some Terminators the rapid fire range, this is a pretty good way to blacken out the sky. Death from the Warp is also 1 point, also usable on Psyker units that have either advanced, deep striked, or used the Teleport Assault ability. Gives their ranged weapons Assault ability, and you add 1 to all hit rolls. This has some weird wording as it says until the end of the turn, which means if they have some jank to let them charge in, they'll get a 1 to punching despite having advanced. Haloed in Soulfire is 2 points again. Psyker again that is coming in with one of the Deep Strike or Teleport Assault abilities. Can't be targeted by ranged units unless there's 18 inches or less away. This will only stop snipers and the Vindicare Assassin. Okay. Mists of Deimos is only usable in your opponent's movement phase after an enemy ends movement within 9 inches of your unit. You can move said unit up to 6 inches away, or put them into strategic reserves if they have the deep strike ability. Honestly, this is hilarious and can easily mess with people. Last one is True Silver Armor for 1 point. This can be used on any Grey Knight unit that's been This is Armor of Contempt. Applies to only one unit that's shooting it now. Not bad, not as good as it used to be, whatever. Honestly, these Grey Knights have a lot of jank, so this is a fun one. I can see why I've always lost to this army. Now, shove off.